Hello, and thanks for joining us on the New Life Show with Dr. Michael Leitman. Hello, Dr. Leitman. Hello, everyone. Hello, Nitza Mazoz. Hello. Today, we'd like to talk to Dr. Leitman about the wisdom of Kabbalah, the wisdom that he's been studying and teaching for the past 40 years, and would like to understand, does this wisdom study reality by way of scientific thinking as a scientific method? Be with us. It's going to be really interesting. Nitza, please. Yeah, the wisdom of Kabbalah, we hear that it's a systematic method, that it's something that you can work with in an orderly fashion. And what would interest us today is to make a comparison. Science has a certain way of thinking, what we call scientific thinking. It examines things, raises questions, doubts, tries to prove, works with the questions that awaken in it. And as a result, an entire scientific method has developed. And today we'd like to see, how does the wisdom of Kabbalah meet scientific criteria? So, let's start with scientific thinking. A person has a question about something. He wants to scrutinize this question. Is there a difference between the ordinary way of scientific thinking and the way of thinking, the scientific way of thinking, in the wisdom of Kabbalah? The thing is that the wisdom of Kabbalah researches the hidden world. In our vessels, in our qualities, with our mind, with our intellect, when we research, investigate this world that we live in, with this, or through this, we can't reach the upper world, in which we research all the phenomena that the wisdom of Kabbalah speaks about. And therefore, we have no choice. We can't turn to Kabbalistic research as we turn to ordinary scientific research if we are still disconnected from the upper world. Meaning, first of all, we have to acquire the vessels that will help us find our way around the upper world, the way we find our way around our world with the natural vessels that we were born with. And accordingly, then we can turn to the research of the wisdom of Kabbalah. And of course, this research will be different than what's going on in this world. It'll be somewhat similar in certain parallel lines, but the principles, they're different. So the wisdom of Kabbalah, it supplements the scientific research or it contradicts it? How would you define it? I'd put it this way. The wisdom of Kabbalah, since it researches the upper world, it reveals to us that what we have in our world comes down from the upper world, like a branch from its root, where the root is the upper world, and its branch is our world, and therefore everything in our world is always a result of the upper world. Therefore, if we study the wisdom of Kabbalah, we can actually know everything that's going on in our world. Everything. Because it's simply a result. It's a branch from the root. But it depends on how do we discover it, to what extent does a Kabbalist reveal it. But no doubt that along with the root, he also reveals its branch. So it means that the wisdom of Kabbalah supplements the ordinary science? No, this is not its goal. It can talk about it. Suppose Kabbalists wrote such things that were revealed only later on, that the earth is round. It says about it in the Zohar from thousands of years ago, about the relation between time, space, and motion that Einstein talked about. It also says about it in the wisdom of Kabbalah from thousands of years ago. And there are other things that science has not yet come to. And therefore, it's not that the wisdom of Kabbalah conceals it, but it doesn't talk about it because it can push people away from the wisdom of Kabbalah because they'll think that it's talking about too abstract things. Yeah, concepts that we can't even digest. Yeah. I want to talk about a second about the principles of the scientific method, one of which is determinism. It's a law that says that everything's predetermined, nothing in nature happens by chance, nature and the world work in a steady way. Does the wisdom of Kabbalah relate this way to reality too? Actually, the wisdom of Kabbalah relates to this law, which is a steady law, fixed law. And when the wisdom of Kabbalah talks about Elohim, literally meaning God, it means nature. It's not referring to God as some entity sitting in the sky doing whatever he feels like, but it's nature, the superior nature, higher than the one we're researching. And it has all the same laws. And therefore, we're not talking about some kind of coincidence. And in the wisdom of Kabbalah, what we use as opposed to science is that if the wisdom of Kabbalah uses different calculations, statistics, and so on, the wisdom of Kabbalah doesn't. When it researches, it does it in an absolute and precise way, meaning it's not based on statistics. No, it's 100% absolute. Yeah. We also know that in science, because it's steady and unchanging, many times science is used in order to predict a certain inclination, trend, direction. Does the wisdom of Kabbalah engage in this too? Not really. We know what's going to happen over time if we take into account that it also depends on man entering this process that we have to go through. If we take this given, this changing part, then, of course, we can talk about all the states that are ahead of us, that will happen one way or another, and so on. We can open for ourselves the entire range of options in accordance with man's behavior. Because on part of the upper, there's no problem. There the laws are certain and absolute. So there's one given that's unchanging and one that is. The Creator doesn't change, man does. Okay, now I want to talk about another principle called empiricism that deals with facts and data. It's the central tool that science uses. Does the wisdom of Kabbalah use facts and data too? The wisdom of Kabbalah researches everything. Where does it come from? It comes from research. The first Kabbalist lived 5,779 years ago. His name was Adam. It's not the Adam that people think about that lived in heaven and so on. But he even wrote a book. And from him and on, his students started engaging in the attainment of the Creator and the attainment of the superior nature, the upper rules, and this is called the wisdom of Kabbalah. So the wisdom of Kabbalah is the attainment of the upper nature, superior nature, just like science is the attainment of the nature of our world, let's call it the lower nature, then the wisdom of Kabbalah is the attainment of the upper nature. How would you define the upper nature? The upper nature, in a word, the thought of creation. And in two words, it's two words, the thought of creation. Can you explain? It's a thought, that's all there is. It's a sentence. It's like you write a certain sentence in a computer, and the computer carries it out. An order. Yeah, an order. The very same way the wisdom of Kabbalah relates to the whole of reality as the thought of creation. A thought. The thought of the upper force that according to this thought, nature begins to work, it becomes realized, including the creation of man and the worlds and everything in them and changes in them. What does this thought of creation actually include? Everything, besides the upper force from which it comes, meaning everything that was created. Okay? Now, science conducts experiments and also the wisdom of Kabbalah. It is entirely based on experiments. Okay, so let's put it this way. How do you conduct a research in the wisdom of Kabbalah? In the simplest and most precise way. A person performs it inside himself. And it's certain? Yeah. But isn't it subjective? No, because he has to rise above his own nature, and therefore it's not subjective. It's actually the most objective possible thing. He has to rise above his egoistic nature, his will to receive, to disconnect from it, to make what we call tzimtzum, restriction, and after he does it, he can already start scrutinizing and examining the upper nature. This is interesting because scientists, usually before they conduct an experiment, they have a certain assumption, something that they want to research. What is the assumption, the question that leads to research in the wisdom of Kabbalah? The main question for a Kabbalist is to research the nature of the Creator, or, as we call it, hashgacha, literally meaning providence. And what does he assume? That it is the absolute good that does good toward the created beings. Meaning that in the experiments that he'll conduct, he'll actually try to prove that nature is good that does good? No. He researches it in a way that's independent of himself or any other final phenomenon. Okay, so let's see, how do we work? What does a Kabbalist plan before he's about to conduct a research? How does he prepare himself for it? He prepares himself because he himself is the object that he conducts the experiment on. So what does he prepare? He prepares himself to be in the vessels of reception and in the vessels of bestowal. And what did you just say now? He prepares himself in order to examine the two forces that exist in nature, reception and bestowal, or reception and giving. What kind of a relation is there between them? How can he make himself resemble the Creator, where to begin with, he is the opposite of the Creator. He is entirely in order to receive, thinking only about himself. And how can he become a bestower, thinking only about others, including the Creator? He examines all of this phenomena. He sees the results. He writes it down, like in any other science. And from this we have the wisdom of Kabbalah. And besides this, the main thing here is that he examines what we call in the wisdom of Kabbalah perception of reality. That he sees the measure to which the reality that he observes, feels, lives in, that this reality depends on his own qualities and not on anything else. Meaning, he changes his qualities, and in accordance with that, he sees how the world that he's observing, that he feels, changes. Meaning, as opposed to the sciences of this world, he has the ability to change reality. By changing his own qualities, he changes reality. Yeah. He sees the reality that he feels and observes as a projection copy of himself. And this what he examines? Yes, this is the range, this is the gist of the research. He actually examines how reality changes toward him, meaning he can examine how his quality changes or his reality, how it changes. Both. He gives an input at the entrance and sees the output at the end. What qualities does he change in him? Actually, just one. From the desire to receive, from enjoying reception to the desire to bestow and enjoying bestowal. From the desire to receive, from enjoying reception. What does it mean to enjoy reception? To enjoy receiving, suppose like now, I drink this cup of tea and I enjoy it. This is the way it's ordinary in our world, what we're familiar with. This is man's nature. And this he changes to what? To the desire to bestow, where I enjoy giving. And what is the relation between the two? Where do I take the desire to bestow, to give from? I have to get such forces from above. I don't have them. So the question here is, what do I do in order to receive the force of bestowal, of giving? How, with this force, do I examine the measure to which I can give, bestow? What kind of pleasure do I discover in it as a result of it? What do I do with this pleasure? Do I enjoy it? Then my bestowal is no longer pure. It's called to bestow in order to receive, in order to enjoy. Or do I bestow and I want for the pleasure to also go in that same direction in which I am bestowing, to that object that I'm bestowing to? This is a pure result. And this is how we examine. And in this we discover that, as opposed to science, we discover that in reality there are just two forces, the force of reception and the force of bestowal. And the relation between the two that builds all the different kinds of matter and forces. So with this broad picture that you just gave us, I want to go back to what Nietzsche asked. In the scientific research, there is a question that I, as a researcher, have. After I form this question, I try to build a certain assumption. What could be the answer to the question that I'm asking? After this assumption, I plan an experiment that will either be able to examine whether my assumption is correct or to prove that it's wrong, which is also okay because I discovered that this isn't the solution, and then I'll move on to another assumption. So, if you can please tell me, a scientist in the method of the wisdom of Kabbalah, what kind of process does he go through? Does he first have a question, then he forms an assumption, and then he plans what kind of experiment is he going to conduct to find out whether his assumption is correct or not? All these things and many more exist in the wisdom of Kabbalah. All of them. Can you demonstrate it? I don't think that it's possible to explain. Suppose, well, first of all, I don't turn to different actions, like a physicist, for example, because I have a certain plan or that I feel like it. In the wisdom of Kabbalah, there's no such thing as I feel like it. In the wisdom of Kabbalah, we advance by first of all discovering that we are under the complete control of the upper force, that is constantly changing, and in that, whether I like it or not, necessarily, I'm in an ongoing, endless experiment, endless research. What kind of research? The research of my nature compared with that of the Creator. The Creator being what? The upper force, the force of giving, bestowal. What does he actually examine? How the upper force influences me, or how do my interaction with the upper force? So it's a very active kind of action, of course. There's no passive examination. I influence him and he influences me, and then I see how much we equalize, move away from each other, come closer, how much he helps me, how much I influence him, and so on. So can we say that there is a research question here that at a certain given moment you're going to investigate? Yeah, but can you tell me what it is? The question for research is always, how do I, in changing conditions, discover the upper force maximally? In each and every moment in my life. And what are the results that a Kabbalist is expecting to get from the actions that he does? I want to discover the upper force. What kind of connection do I have with him? In what vessels did I reveal him? Do I perceive him? Am in a mutual connection with him according to our equivalence of qualities. This is the only way that we can be connected. Meaning, here I already examine and receive many results. What qualities do I have? What qualities, if we can call this qualities, does the Creator present to me? How do we come closer? How are we in some kind of a partial, more complete or less complete connection? What are the measures of the connection, the nature of the connection, and how from this state can we advance? Because the process is a process that continues until the connection between us will be complete. That means that at the end, I attain the upper force completely, to the fullest. It's not like in our world that we're limited because of the earth and different qualities, eventually also our qualities, our mind, our emotions. What about that? We're limited. In the wisdom of Kabbalah, there are no limitations. Why? Because I get the qualities from the Creator. I can always demand more and more. Please. So the more you advance, what do you get from Him? All of His qualities. Whatever I want. These are qualities that do not exist in the human nature to begin with. Of course. All in all, what are we? Small egoistic animals that don't see beyond our own boundaries. And what qualities can we acquire that are beyond the boundaries, the limitations of the egoistic perception? It's hard to explain. Here, I'm saying that the wisdom of Kabbalah has a certain weakness because it can't prove. It's not about proof. You can't explain it to a person that's not there. I don't want to make this kind of comparison, but it's like taking a cat and starting to explain Einstein's theories to it. Physics or chemistry. Exactly. It's truly so. Our show is almost up. There are many things that we didn't touch yet. We'll talk about them on our future shows. But about what you did say, you said that in the research of the wisdom of Kabbalah, a person reaches objective results, as opposed to any other researcher, scientist in the ordinary sciences of nature. What are objective results, and how do you reach them in the wisdom of Kabbalah? First of all, when we act in our world, ordinary people, we act out of our corporeal mind and emotions, meaning whatever we receive in our will to receive, this is the data that we have to work with. Meaning we're always limited by human nature. Bring someone else from another planet, suppose. He'll get different results because his nature is different. Of course. When you're saying nature, you mean the sum total of his qualities. Yeah. So in the wisdom of Kabbalah, what happens? How do you come out of this subjectiveness? Because in the wisdom of Kabbalah, I do not research with my own nature, but with his nature. Whose nature? the Creator's. I get from Him the qualities of bestowal, the qualities of giving. And in these qualities, to the extent to which I have these qualities above my corporeal qualities, in these new qualities, I start seeing the world of truth. This is why it's called the wisdom of truth. Okay, another question. You said that the general question of research in the wisdom of Kabbalah is how do I reveal the upper force to the fullest under changing conditions in every moment in my life. And from here comes a question. You said that the upper force is steady and unchanging. So the upper force in the wisdom of Kabbalah, is it something changing or unchanging? Steady and unchanging. As it says, I have not changed my havaya. The good that does good to the good and the bad. Absolute. But to the measure to which I acquire his qualities, then every time I receive from him a certain slice, and then these qualities, they change in me. Okay, our talk is almost up. From everything that we talked about up until now, what would you summarize as the scientific way of thinking in the wisdom of Kabbalah? That first of all, we have to acquire the nature of the Creator. We have to rise above our own nature. We have to disconnect from all the phenomena of this world and research only with the forces that we get from the Creator, the nature of the Creator. And then we actually research, investigate Him, and not really Him, but His attitude toward us, which is actually the main theme in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that's called providence. Thank you very much, Dr. Leitman. Thank you, Nitza. Thank you for being with us. Till next time, all the best.